Two, one.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this very special event at the Scottish Storytelling Festival. My name is Haneen, and it's my pleasure to be hosting this event today alongside my wonderful colleagues and the festival itself, and David Heathfield in the room, and Jackie Ross as well. It's a great pleasure and a deep honor to host an event which will be introducing the work of wonderful children from Gaza. It feels more important than ever to share their work and show the bright side of their humanity, to show that those children have choices in life and they need to be given what they deserve. And it's also important to share the important concept of care and how this can be shared through the retelling of those stories across different continents, different regions around the world. This event is a storytelling event, but it's also a way to stand up for justice, to show our humanity, because when oppression is exercised, is not an option to stand by. And as educators, as storytellers, as teachers, as parents, as human beings, we can share this concept of care, we can stand up for justice, we can show our colleagues in Gaza that we care about them, that we love them, that their work is important and their creativity is going to be shared by gathering and showing the creative work done by colleagues around the world, including our David Heathfield. I would also like to welcome everyone who's watching the live stream now on YouTube or wherever channel you're watching from, but also all our colleagues who will be watching the recording later. I would like to give a special shout out and a warm welcome to our colleagues, dear colleagues, teachers in Gaza, whom without we couldn't be here sharing this work. To our lovely children, young people, or adults now who have managed to share a story in the past with us and we will be retelling tonight. I will hand over to David now to start the event. Over to you, David.
Thank you, Haneen. But before I begin, Haneen, would you just say a greeting in Arabic to people in the Arabic-speaking world and from Palestine who might be watching live on YouTube or might be watching a recording now, tomorrow, or even in a year's time, because this video, this recording will be available. So would you like to make an Arabic greeting as well?
Yeah, I will. Thank you, David. So, مرحبا، السلام عليكم لكل حدا بيشوفنا في كل الدول العربية أو الدول الأجنبية، لكل حدا بيوقف مع الفلسطينيين والناس من غزة، لكل حدا بيهتم لشغل الطلاب، لكل حدا قاعد بيتابعنا هلأ على الزوم أو على الفيسبوك أو على اليوتيوب، لكل حدا رح يشوف هذا التسجيل بعد هيك. كتير مهم إنه إحنا نبين فكرة الاهتمام بالآخرين، إنه إحنا نوقف مع كل أهلنا في غزة. Looking forward to that.
Thank you. And as begin so many stories told in Arabic, I will begin this story. A story I learned from Malak, a girl in Gaza, and she told it about 2 years ago at the World Storytelling Cafe. Kan makan b'kedim azaman. Once there was, and there was not a child. And the child went to their parent and said, "Parent, tell me, how can I live the best life?" "You want to know how to live the best life," said the parent. "Well, child, there are 3 things you must always do. Now, Everybody who is with me now, can you get ready with your hands and your voices and join in? The parent said, always eat the best food. Could you do that with me? Always eat the best food. Always sleep in the best bed. Everybody, always sleep in the best bed. And always live in the best houses. And always live in the best houses. How can I do that? Said the child. It's impossible. We're poor. We have so little. And the parent said, ah, child, only eat when your belly is empty, and whatever you eat will be the best food. Work hard as you can all day long, and at the end of the day, wherever you lay your head, that will be the best bed. And most important of all, my child, treat every single person you meet in this life with respect. Listen to their stories. And when you listen to the stories of others, you will be welcomed into their hearts. And when you live in the hearts of other people, then you're living in the best houses. And the child listened, and the child remembered, and the child lived their best life. I tell this story in the name of all of the children from Palestine. And let's have a look at this image of some of the children who have shared their stories, telling their stories at the World Storytelling Cafe between 2020 and 2023. Haneen, would you like to tell us a little bit about how children in Gaza got involved at the World Storytelling Cafe and the connection, how I got to know you? But just before we do that, I should acknowledge Jackie Ross. And we're here right now because of Jackie. Jackie Ross, a well-known Scottish storyteller from Aberdeenshire. And Jackie is with us today in the Zoom room, but unfortunately, Jackie's not very well, is unable to speak, but she's here and she's going to share ideas in the chat with us, which are very, very valuable. And Jackie is a big part of this project. And thanks also to Donald Smith, the director of the Scottish International Storytelling Festival, who has invited us to be part of this incredible, wonderful festival, which I'm enjoying here in the Scottish Storytelling Centre in Edinburgh. So Haneen, how did we get to know each other, and how did kids in Gaza come to tell their stories with the world?
Okay, so in 2022, David Heathfield invited the teachers in Gaza, including myself, when I was working as an English teacher in a prep school in Gaza at that time during the lockdown in 2022. And he introduced the idea of the World Storytelling Cafe, which has been set up and established by John Rowe. So David invited all the teachers who are interested in taking part with their learners to come along and tell a story. And what was really enriching and interesting, that we were not restricted to any specific kind of script or a story. We were not restricted to any sort of, say, folk tales or personal narratives. It was absolutely up to the learners to choose what they wanted to share with the world. And a little bit of context. Gaza has been under the blockade for more than 17 years. And at that time, the learners in Gaza, and still are, they wouldn't have the opportunity to connect to people from the outside. Nobody is allowed in, they're not allowed out, so they're very restricted environment around the travel and, if you like, a cultural exchange. So that was such a perfect opportunity for the learners to come along and be the center of what they're doing. And it's important that their identities are cherished in the space where they are invited to share their stories. So it was an opportunity for the teachers and the students to come together to the World Storytelling Cafe during the lockdown and share stories. And this is how the thing started back in 2022. And the teachers from Gaza were very interested in doing that. A lot of colleagues, which David is going to mention later, have took part in that, and they invited their learners to tell stories. The stories were varied between folk tales that were passed on through the generations, things that they have cherished and listened to from their grandparents or their parents, but also personal narratives which have been created by the children themselves and they wanted to share with the world. It was very interesting to see how learners in a very tiny place that were not allowed in or out of Gaza were very confident and proud to share their stories in that space. And it's not always easy to say a safe space, because what is safe for you might not be safe for me. And it's always challenging to know what's safe for the learners because they are very different. But I would say the World Storytelling Cafe was a very safe space. Everybody was welcoming the children. Everybody was showing them a lot of care and positioned them in the place they deserve as human beings in this world, have the rights as every other child to get education, to feel loved, cared about, and cherished. Over to you, David.
Oh, thank you, Haneen. And what I should point out is not nearly all, most of the stories that were shared were stories that were shared before October 2023. And it really got going during COVID when people were in lockdown. But even since that time, a number of stories have come our way from Gaza, particularly in the period around March to April of this year, 2024. Some students that were displaced, maybe, for example, in Rafah in the south of Gaza, were able to film themselves and send an MP4 video file to me, and some more stories have been shared. So it's an ongoing thing. And children in Gaza, even now, are finding out about their stories being retold by people around the world, which is what we're coming to now. The fact that the stories are not just told by children in Gaza, but when you, Haneen, were staying with my wife Tammy and me in Exeter over the new year, because you yourself are in the UK at the moment, waiting to be reunified with your family who were then in Gaza, and now we're in Cairo and still waiting to come to the UK. At that time, New Year's Day 2024, we made the decision to launch Tell a Child in Gaza's Tale, inviting people from all around the world, people who you and I have contacts with, to come in and retell the stories, make recordings of yourselves telling the stories. And some of the people who are already with us in the Zoom room now, like my wife Tammy and Veena, who's in India, have already been so generous to retell these children's stories. And I'm hoping that more of you, Mariella, who's in Argentina, you've also told a story. And I'm hoping that more of you who hear this will consider retelling a child in Gaza's tale, and maybe also enabling others, maybe people in your family, or if you're involved in education, maybe students that you work with, whether they're children, whether they're professional storytellers, more likely new to storytelling, to share a child in Gaza's tale in whatever way you wish to. It doesn't have to be repeated word for word in the words of the child, although some of you have chosen to do that. Most of you have told the story as we do as storytellers, in your own words, but keeping to the truth and with respect for the story. and the child in Gaza who shared the story in the first place. As Haneen said, stories you children in Gaza chose to share with the world. Now, this in the image I'm going to show you now is, let me just find, is Deema. And we're hoping that Deema is going to be joining us very shortly live from Egypt, where she's displaced. So Deema is from Gaza, but she and her family are now in Egypt. And this is an image on the left of Deema telling the story of the white elephant 3 years ago in May 2021, when she was about 14. Now Deema's 17. So hopefully she'll be joining us. She hasn't managed to get in yet, but there's lots of connection issues. And on the right is Jackie Ross. And Jackie, you have shared, I can't even count how many of the about 80 stories from Gaza that we've got us going as part of this project. And some of the stories you've shared in English, and those stories you've also shared in Doric, the language, the dialect that you work so hard to share with the world. And had you had a voice today, Jackie, you would be telling another story. You told Deema's story. We'll hear Deema's story later. You also told a story which was told by Noor. And Noor, again, a child who has told so many stories to us over the years from your home in Gaza. So let's actually hear the words of a child in Gaza telling us. Oh no, hang on a minute, that's going to be deep. No, we're not going to hear Noor telling the story, although you can listen to Noor by going to the links that Haneen is sharing in the chat. You can listen to that later. But right now, you're going to hear Jackie Ross retelling a beautiful story, a powerful story that Noor chose to tell. And the story is titled A City Under Attack. So this is Jackie's version in Doric.
And they couldn't get in on a meat or water, on a supplies of all. And the folk were fair scunnered. Well, they were starving. And they were wondering if they should just surrender. Or should they maybe hold on to their dignity and die in the process? Well, the ruler, he decided that in hope that their enemy would give them mercy. But just as he was awa to order a drawbridge to be ta'en down and open the gates to the city, this old wifey come running up and she says, "Stop, stop, hud your hand, for I can save us toon. I can save the hell lot of us if you get my coo." "A coo? Far are we going to get a coo?" scoffed the folks standing round about. "We're all starving. Far do you think we'll find a coo?" But the old woman says, "I bet if we had a good look round the town, we'd come upon a coo. Somebody'll hae." And sure enough, when they gaed searching round the town, they heard this muffled moo coming fae down at the back o' a house. And there was the coo. His family had been hiding it so they could hae the milk out of themselves. Well, the coo was brought to the old woman, and she says, "That's gran. Now I need 12 buckets of grain." "Fit, but we're all starving. I mean, we've hardly got a single grain, let alone 12 buckets." "Ah," said the woman, "if Abdi puts in just a wee bitty, we'll soon hae 12 buckets." And she ta'en her ain wee can. There was no muckle left, but she poured it into the first bucket. And afore long, other folk came with their wee thochties of grain and put them in. and the twa buckets were full to the brim. Abdi wondered which was going to do now. Well, she ta'en the twa buckets and she coped them out right in front of the coo. And of course the coo wasted no time at all in gobbling it up. Is she gone gate? Said the folk. It was just about our last grain in the hell place. Fit she deen. But the ruler says, had you wished? My next morning we were going to surrender, so I hadn't lost anything. And you never ken, maybe the all wife has applaud. And sure enough she did. When the coo had scoffed the last bit of grain, she got over and opened the big yet to the tune, and she shoved the coo out. Well, it wasn't long afore the enemy army gathered it up. Ha! Well, the general, he was wondering, he thought, fit on earth if they let a coo out for? Surely they mun be starving like us. Surely they hanna got as much meat as they can put a coo out. But to his troops he says, they're just trying to soften us up. They're trying to win us off, begin us a coo. It winna work, he says, but it will make some fine feasting for us boys. And a coo was slaughtered and fed to his hungry men. Aye, 'cause they were fair hungert and there was no muckle meat to be got in the hell area. Well, as they were tucking in to their mate, the cook come to the general and said, General, I just, when I opened up his stomach as coo, you'll never believe it, but inside there was grain, undigested grain. Well, the general couldn't believe it. The folk in the walled city, they had enough grain to feed a coo. So he thought that they mun be weel furnished, weel plenished, and surely they were able to withstand any length of siege, and certainly longer than his troops could have out. So the next morning he packed the hell camp and they all marched away. Well, you can imagine there was great rejoicing inside the tunes to see that, and the all was paraded about as a hero, for she had indeed saved the tune with a coo.
Jackie, it's wonderful to hear you. We all believed you were telling us the story live because you've got that presence. And it's a story that you've told in Doric. Jackie, would you write in the chat what it means to you to be a reteller of children in Gaza's stories, and also why you're choosing to tell the stories both in English and, of course, in Doric? And when you've written that down, Haneen or I will read out what you've written. But while you're just making a note of that, I'm glad to say that we have been joined by Deema from Gaza, who's now in Cairo. But before we go to Deema, I just want to say it's a story that Noor told, A City Under Attack. I've told that story. Gizem Salah in Turkey has told that story. Rebecca Robles in Mexico has retold that story. Larissa Chernova in Ukraine has told the story of a city under attack. And there are many more. So it's not just about finding a story and having it retold once by someone somewhere in the world, but these same stories are being told and retold around the world. And we've only been doing it since January. So we're still really at the early stages. And now there's never been a more important time to share these stories, to honor the children. Haneen, before we go to Deema and before we read out Jackie's words, could you say, why is it that the children shared their stories in English rather than in Arabic and what it means, you think, for children to have their stories being retold. And we'll find out what Deema thinks as well in a moment.
Thank you, David. So I think the sharing using English language for children in Gaza particularly has that impact of wanting to gain broader audience to their stories. So, of course, when we teach a foreign language, the ultimate purpose would be to be able to communicate. And when we're talking about a place like Gaza, if they're not allowed out and there are no opportunities or very few for the learners to connect to the world, so it makes it more important that they learn English and they share their stories in English to tell their story to the world. One of the prominent questions that we used to ask our children when we were teaching at school, why do you think you need to learn English? And they would always say, because we have a story to tell. And this story is very important to be told and retold and shared and reshared across the world. That's one reason. The other one is always when you speak a language, I think, other than your native, you have a distance of what you can or can't say. And it may help the children placed in traumatic contexts and war zones like Gaza not to go very traumatized or extremely emotional when they tell their stories in Arabic. So it has this cathartic effect and therapeutic for them to tell their stories in another language other than their native one. The impact of telling a story to the world. It has a huge impact, and most importantly, that when you are placed in a context like Gaza, where opportunities, even for us as educators and teachers, are very, very few, and we have very limited access to resources, to books, to articles, to videos, it's important that we kind of distract ourselves from the feeling of abandoning by the world. So very often learners feel that they're not cared about and the world doesn't know about them. But actually, there is a lot to tell from Gaza and a lot of creative work that has been established, born and bred in Gaza. This might be kind of biased because I am Palestinian from Gaza, but everybody who has come across our paths, worked with colleagues and myself and learners from Gaza, would know that we will give it our hearts and souls to share our stories and work with the world. So these stories are very important to be shared. It enhances the children's confidence. It establishes bridges of cultural understanding. It educates them about the world. It shows them that there are lots of goodness out there, and it's not only about the powers and the governments. And that was at the time when I was in Gaza teaching, but also now. It's very important because when this genocide takes place in Gaza, and as we speak, lots of children are being killed, it's very important that as educators, education matters, language makes a lot of sense to stand up for justice and fight oppression. And the humanistic, artistic way of showing that is by picking up a story from Gaza and retell it to your children, to your colleagues, to your friends. You don't need to be a teacher yourself or an educator, but it's very important that you have a position on the right side of the history. And that's our mission as educators. David.
You put that so eloquently, Haneen. I've got nothing to add other than to agree with what you say and talk about the incredible creativity of Palestinian children. They always blow our minds.
Thank you.
And staying with Palestinian children, we have now been joined by Deema. Deema, we showed your picture just a few moments ago of when you were 14 and telling the story of the white elephant. And Haneen, would you just come back in for a moment and introduce us to Deema? Hi, Deema.
Hi.
Hello, Deema. Nice to see you again. So Deema is 17 years old, a young storyteller from Gaza. She was one of the most wonderful students that I have taught during my time in her prep school at UNRWA schools in Gaza back in 2020 and 2021. She was an active member in both my English and drama clubs. She has participated in telling stories and acting plays on Zoom. Deema has been one of the young storytellers who has joined us in 2020, and she told the story of the white elephant at the World Storytelling Cafe. Deema has chosen that story, and she told it very beautifully and very confidently in the room, which contained lots of people from different parts of the world at that time. Due to the war on Gaza, Deema was forced to leave in April 2024 to Cairo. She has endured a lot of loss and fear and trauma herself before she arrived safely to Cairo. Like so many Palestinians, Deema is resilient and she's moving on. She's trying to reestablish her life now. She's working from home, doing online study to get her secondary school certificate. And she is also participating with us at storytelling events, telling the white elephant story. So here's the wonderful Deema joining us today to tell us the white elephant. Over to you, Deema.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mrs. Haneen, for your beautiful words. Okay. Hi, I'm Deema, and I used to live in Gaza for my whole life, and I forced to move on to Egypt so we can start a new life with no fear of being killed in any moment. I'm here trying to start a new life, trying to study again, and I'm telling story again, which is something that's like makes me out of all the overthinking. Every time I come to tell a story with Mrs. Haneen and Miss David, I just forget all the problems I have and tell a story. So maybe this story would be a game changer for somebody's lives. So it's a very beautiful story. I will tell it, and you should retell it for people. And yeah, so I shall start right now. And yeah, once upon a time, there was a white elephant who could talk like us, like human beings. The finest animal was a white elephant, but his mother was old and poor and blind. One day, the white elephant suggested to his mother to go and live in a distant cave. The mother agreed, but what happened? Let's see. In one day, the white elephant heard a voice coming from the forest. Help me! Help me! I'm lost! I'm lost! Help me! The white elephant said to his mother, Mother, I want to go and help him. His mother said, No, my son. No, my son. Your goodness will be treasured by tragedy, will be treated by tragedy. The elephant didn't hear his mother, and he went to help the man. When he arrived, the man said, Oh, oh, I've been lost in the woods for the 7 days. I've been lost in the woods for 7 days. The white elephant said to the man, don't worry, don't worry. I'll take you home safe. I'll take you home safe. And you just have to climb on my back. Just to climb on my back. And the man climbed on the elephant. And the elephant arrived the man to his home safety. But the man was greedy. He knew that the king lost his favorite animal when he left the town. So he ran to the king and he said, Your Majesty, I found a very, very beautiful white elephant. And he could talk like us. The king said, Really? The man said to the king, Your Majesty, yes, but I just need your help. I need some trainers to capture the white elephant, and I need your permission. The king said, Yes, go, take a trainer and capture the white elephant. Then the trainers and the man captured the white elephant. But after a few days, one of the trainers came to the king and said, Your Majesty, the white elephant refused to eat, and he's very sick. The king, what? The king went to the white elephant. He asked him, Why you are not eating? Why are you not eating? The white elephant said, How can I eat when my poor blind mother is starving? The king said, Oh, my dear elephant, oh, you are free to go. Go for your mother. Then the white elephant said to the king, Thank you, Your Majesty. Thank you, Your Majesty. And he ran and crashed into the forest trees until he arrived to his mother. He saw her. She was tired, but she was alive. Then he told the story. Then he arrived and he said to his mother, I miss you, my mother. And his mother said, I miss you too, my son. I miss you too, my son. The white elephant told his mother the story. His mother said, You see, your goodness was treated by tragedy. You see, human beings are bad. Human beings are not good. The white elephant said to his mother, Let's just don't focus on let's just not focus on the badness of the man and focus on the king goodness. That's the story. Can I say something, David?
Yes, you may. Of course, say something, Deema. Before you say something, because you've told us the story, let's all just give a huge round of applause for Deema. That was absolutely magnificent storytelling.
Thank you.
Please write in the chat anything you would like to say to Deema about
I'm
the
sorry
way
for
she
the
told
noise.
the story
I'm sorry,
and about the story itself. But Deema, while people are writing their comments for you, please tell us what you would like to say about that beautiful story and the beautiful way you told it.
I just want to say that I've learned a lot from this story, and in every situation I found myself in my life, I would love to treat people with goodness, like the elephant did with the man. So this goodness one day will come back for me, and my goodness will be treated with also goodness. Your goodness will never go away. You will always get treated by your goodness. We say in Arabic, "Kama tudin tudan." As you give, you've been given. Like what you have given, it will return to you, even if it's a bad thing or a good thing. So always let's do good things for people without expecting them to do the good for us, and just to act like us, kind. Let's just be kind people, not like the man, but like the king and the white elephant. They always treat people with goodness. And also, let's see the good side of everything. Like, I would say, like, maybe, okay, I got forced to leave my country and my home and where I grow up and my family and everything, my home, my things, my books. But I'm not seeing the empty
Part.
the empty part of the glass. I'm seeing the full part of the glass, that maybe I came here to Egypt to establish a new life, to start a new life, to start a new beginning, and just don't regret on your goodness. You will never be forgotten for your goodness. You will always will be rewarded. Just this story, I just maybe we can, every time we do good and we don't be returned by good, just remember that one day somebody will treat you good as you treated some people before. So yeah, I don't know if you understand, my words aren't the perfect thing, but the point is be good to everyone, and let's see the full part of the cup, not the empty one.
Deema, you express yourself so beautifully, and what you said about that story where you pick out the focus on the kindness of the ruler and how you bring that into your own life
Yeah,
is very inspiring. And you must look at the chat if you can, because
I will.
there are amazing comments coming in appreciating your storytelling. And I'm going to ask Haneen to read out a couple of those comments in a moment. Deema, you are such an impressive young woman, because you talked about you've come out of Gaza, you were in Gaza, and you found out from Haneen that your story was being shared and was being retold. And the
Yeah,
person who first retold your story, Scottish storyteller Jackie Ross, who we've already heard from, told your story, told the white elephant in English and in Doric as well. And what did it mean to you when you found out that Jackie told your story?
I just want to say that I was really been going in very hard stuff in my life. We just came from Gaza, from the war, from bombing and everything. I didn't have internet connection, and I just came to Egypt from a long trip. It took us one day to arrive to Egypt safety, and I was really in a in bad mood. Nothing was good in my life. I left everything behind. I left my family behind me, and then I found a message from Mrs. Haneen saying that Jackie had told my story, retell it, and I was super happy that my story is being retelling, and someone cares about Deema. Someone cares about Deema's stories. Someone really watched Deema and cared about and learned from her, and that's really meant to me. Thank you, Jackie. I just want to say you turned my mood literally. I was in a very bad situation, and like then just someone telling your story again can make you this happy. Someone is really caring about you. So I don't know. It was one of the greatest moments in these bad days I had. So always retell Gaza's story, children, and every children's in the world, because I'm sure I'm Gazan, and I'm sure that means a lot for them, a lot. You can't imagine being supported from people, and yeah. So always retell stories and tell stories for children's, and be kind. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and yeah, and for your beautiful words.
Thank you, Deema. And of course, the situation for children, and we don't know the situation of some of the children whose stories we're sharing. We don't know what your circumstances are. But as Haneen always says, it's important to keep telling these stories and valuing the stories. The children who are still in Gaza are facing huge problems. But even Deema, who's got out of Gaza but is now displaced in Egypt, still huge problems to face. People are displaced. They don't have the same rights as Egyptian citizens. They're not able to work. They're not able to access education in Egypt in the same way. It has to be all online from Palestine, and that's very difficult. So I want to let you know that Deema has a family fundraiser. And if you're watching the recording or you're watching live, feel free to donate to Deema's fundraiser. And I'm sure Haneen will put a link to your fundraiser in the chat in a moment. But Haneen, can you come back in and can you tell us about your feelings, but also read out some comments from the chat and also tell us what has Jackie written?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thanks, Deema. That was impressive and very important to hear. So Jackie wrote, anyone who has listened to these wonderful youngsters can't fail to be impressed with their joy and enthusiasm and their telling and their generosity in sharing. I feel a bond with these children. It's an honor to share their tales, and I think this project is a wonderful way to show the humanity of ordinary people right across the world. These children show more humanity than I can begin to express. Their hope, their morality, their caring is clear to see in the stories they choose to tell. Yes, Haneen, heart and souls are shared perfectly, but thank you, Jackie. Tammy says, well, that's about me. I don't need to read it.
No, read it. It's okay.
So Jackie says again, I can't begin to express how much it touched me to hear what Deema said when she knew I had shared her wonderful story of the white elephant. It's one of the most important storytellings I have ever done. It brought home the importance of this project in a very personal way to me. You are a game changer, Deema. Joe says, thank you for this inspiring story, Deema. Sue says, wonderful story, Deema. Jackie
Thanks,
says,
guys.
love this story, Deema. Susan says, Deema, that was wonderful again. Tammy says, a story beautifully told that gives us faith in humanity, as you do, Deema. Anna says, thank you for the beautiful story, Deema. Jackie says, may you always find goodness around you, Deema. Anne says, marvelous to hear Deema telling that story. Joe says, again, may your faith in goodness come true in the world. Enidina, sorry if I mispronounced that, she says,
Enidina's in
Enidina, okay.
in Sardinia.
Yeah, hi, Enidina. Thank you, Deema. Vina says, Deema, so proud of you. You narrated so beautifully. I am so happy as I have also retold this story. Lots of ducks. Jennifer says, beautiful Deema, I hope all the goodness in the world comes to you and your family and other people in Gaza as well.
Thank you. I think and I think more comments are going to keep rolling in. Right now, I want to just reflect on the three stories that we've heard so far. I've retold a story I learned from Malak about how to live the best life. We've heard Jackie telling the story that she learned from Noor, a city under attack. And now we've heard Deema telling us the white elephant. And I think we're just getting the sense of the wisdom and the quality of the stories that children in Gaza have chosen to tell. And we haven't just picked the best ones. Of course, these are exemplary and fantastic ones, but all of the 80 stories that have been shared as part of this project are extraordinary and deeply human, as Haneen said earlier, both folk tales, personal tales, and stories that children have created. Let's move on, because in this session, and I want to point this out, there's quite a lot more stories that we're going to share. We're going to hear stories being retold from different parts of the world. Everybody who's with us, please keep writing in the comments. If you've told a story like Vina has mentioned, please write about your experience in the chat, share your thoughts. If you haven't told a story yet, talk about your feelings and what you might like to do and how you can imagine taking these ideas, because we're still at the beginnings of this project. It's a project that started spontaneously. We didn't get funding for it. We just started doing it in response to what was happening in Gaza, starting in October of last year. But now things are starting to develop, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. But right now, we're going to meet another Palestinian child. Most of the stories have been told from Gaza, but a few have also been told by children in the West Bank. And one of the most prolific storytellers in the West Bank, in Hebron, is Jana. And Jana's teacher is Lamia Tamimi. I'm just going to share an image. So you can see this set of images of Jana telling stories. For example, the bottom left, the story of Plop; in the middle, Pete's buttons; the bottom right, the town mouse and the country mouse; the top left, Joha and the grapes; the top right, the story we're going to listen to Jana telling in a moment, which is the story of the tree. And so in a moment, we're going to listen to Jana telling the story of the tree, which she shared as part of this project. And then afterwards, we're going to listen to a short interview between me, Jana, and her teacher, Lamia, in Hebron, a recording that was made just about a week ago. They couldn't join us live, unfortunately, but it's as good as. So first, let's hear Jana in Hebron telling your beautiful story.
The tree and declined its branches or sit under its leaves. The boy said, "Tree, tree, I want to play. I can climb your branches. I can stay all day." The tree said, "Yes, yes, I want to play. I love it when you come and stay." The boy said, "Tree, tree, I don't want to play. I want to play with toys today." The tree said, "Then take my apples and steal them too. You will have some money very soon." The boy came with his family. The boy said, "Tree, tree, I am all grown up. I am building a house and I need some wood. Take my branches to build your home. I love to help, so I fell alone." After a while, the boy came again. The boy said, "Tree, tree, I want to sail away. Can I take your trunk? What do you say?" The tree said, "Take my trunk to build a boat. My wood is strong to keep you afloat." After a while, the old man came. And the man said, "Tree, tree, now I am old. Can I stay here and rest my bones?" And the tree said, "Of course you can. Sit by my roots and well remember the days you used to pick all the fruits." Hi, my name's Jana.
Oh, that's a wonderful retelling, Jana. It's a story that I learned and that I shared. And I first heard it told or retold by a child in Gaza by this girl, Sheraz, at the World Storytelling Cafe. And then another teacher who lives in the UK and a storyteller, Sue Piper, told that story, and she created rhymes. And she worked with Lamia, who is Jana's teacher, and her students online, volunteering from the UK, doing storytelling. And Sue is a wonderful rhymer, Sue the rhymer. And Sue created those rhymes which Jana was using as she retold that story. But it was wholly Jana's idea to make those wonderful pictures and to tell that in her own creative way. You see that she's using lots of cuts there. She's edited her own story absolutely beautifully. So here's now the interview between me interviewing Jana and her teacher, Lamia. And Lamia, we know each other because we've done courses. Tell me, how do you know Jana?
Jana is my student from the 6th grade. I have been teaching her for now, it's the 3rd year. She's an amazing student, and she has very amazing talents in telling stories. I'm very proud of her.
That's true. Jana, you're a famous storyteller. All around the world, people are listening and learning your stories. So Jana, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello, my name is Jana. I'm from Heathfield, Palestine. I am 13 years old. I am in the 8th grade at Kurtuba School. I love telling stories in English.
Fantastic. And thank you for your stories, your incredible stories. One of the stories that you've told is The Tree. And we've just watched The Tree. And I would like to know, what do you think of this story?
I loved all the story, but this story was a special one. I learned from it how to be generous and give to the best I can. I love the reminds that Susan told us.
Yes, thank you. And how did you learn the story of the tree?
We had a class. We had a Zoom class with Miss Lamia and Suzanne. She told us the story, and I retold it again.
Wonderful. Yes, Sue Piper is such a great storyteller. And when you told the story, you made your own artwork, your beautiful pictures. Can you tell us about your pictures?
I love drawing very much, and these pictures help to retell the story and easier to remember.
You're a wonderful artist, and you're right, they can really help to remember the story. And how do you feel about telling this story to people all over the world?
At first, I felt afraid. Then when my teacher told me that people feel happy to hear my story, and I felt proud, and I began to tell more stories.
That's absolutely wonderful. And you've told a lot of stories. The Four Candles, Plop, the Town Mouse and the Country Mouse. A teacher in Cyprus called Despina told the story of the Town Mouse and the Country Mouse. A teenage student in Cuba called Sophia learned the story of Plop from you, and she told it in her school in Cuba. I mean, it's wonderful. How does it make you feel that people are not only listening, but they're also learning and telling the stories they've learned from you in different countries?
I feel so happy and excited. I love the way they try to retell the story like my way, or use pictures like me.
Brilliant, brilliant. And one more question for you, Jana. Is there anything that you'd like to say to all the young people of Palestine?
I hope that you read and tell more stories in English to have a bright future as a 14-year-old storyteller. I just want to remind you all that stay strong and keep dreaming. Stories connect us, help us understand each other, and give us hope. Never stop developing a future full of love, safety, and peace. We are all in this together.
We're all in this together. Those words are very, very true, Jana. Lamia, you must be so proud of Jana.
I am. I will always be proud of her.
And Jana, I hope that soon you will tell us another story.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, Jana and Lamia, thank you so much for this interview. It's wonderful that you're with us. I'm just going to stop the recording. Brilliant. And here, those images again of Jana telling these wonderful stories. What an inspiration. She's one of the younger storytellers, as part of the project. And there she is on the left telling another story, plot. And you can see a young woman called Sofia Diaz in Havana City in Cuba telling the story of Plop in her class, in her English class. So these stories are not just being learned and told by English learners in Palestine, they're being learned by young people learning English in other parts of the world. And indeed, this is Maram from Gaza, who told the story, "The Neighbor is Before the House." It's another story that I've told. It's another story that Jackie Ross has told in English and in Doric. And it's also a story that, I'm going to come out of that share. It's also, sorry, have I stopped the share? Yes. Yeah, thank you very much, Sandy. Wonderful. So it's also a story that that Jackie Ross has told, and that a young woman in Cuba, Sophia, has told. And we're going to now go to Sophia, who's going to introduce yourself. It's not possible for people in Cuba to come online live. The internet is kept very, very restricted in Cuba. But here's a little video that Sophia managed to send in spite of the electricity outages that happened just last weekend in the storms. As soon as the electricity was restored, this video arrived in my inbox.
Relationships and mutual respect in the community. I have already told the story plot for this project, and it teaches us that we can't make a fuss over things unnecessarily. And to young people of Palestine, I would like to say, don't let fear stop you.
So here now is Sophia retelling Maram's story, "The Neighbor is Before the House."
It was said a man called Abu Khaled lived next door to Abu Ahmed, who had good manners. One day, Abu Khaled got into financial difficulties and found himself in debt. To pay off his debts, he decided to sell his house. He offered his house for sale at a value of 1,000 dinars. In fact, the value of his house was not worth more than 500 dinars. When his neighbor Abu Ahmed asked the reason for the high price of his house, he said, "The value of my house is 500 dinars, but my neighbors are worth at least another 500 dinars. And that makes 1,000 dinars. When Abu Ahmed heard this, she decided to help him and stopped him from selling his house. They continued to be neighbors, and people said, "The neighbor is before the house."
The neighbor is before the house. So the neighbor paid off his friend's debts so that he could remain neighbors with him. And it's a proverb that's popular across Palestine. Again, you've inspired us, Maram. And when you go and find Maram's story, which is part of the project, you can delight in her telling, which again, she made paper puppets. Absolutely wonderful. We're going to go to another story. You might be thinking, oh, all of the stories are being told by girls. And of course, actually, most of them are told by girls. But here's an example of a young man telling a story, Mohammed. And Mohammed was telling this story in preparation for a storytelling competition, an international competition. And it's again a story with a very powerful message that resonates with what's happening right now in Palestine. It's a story about never giving up. So let's go to Mohammed now.
There lived a boy named Rodney in a village. Rodney was very happy with his family, but his happiness could not last for long. Rodney and his fellow villagers faced a severe drought. They desperately waited for rains, but with no luck. All the crops, land, and even trees dried up. The cattle started dying. As there was no rain, the stream was drying up slowly. One night, during a meet with the villagers, Rodney said, "Friends, we all have heard tales from our grandparents an underground river flowing through our village. Why don't we dig and see?" The villagers agreed and started digging. They dug for some days, but gave up soon. However, Rodney kept on digging. When people told him to give up, he said, "God is helping and guiding my way." One day, when he had dug deep enough, he saw water. His attitude of not giving up saved the whole village. Never give up so easily. However, Rodney advised all the villagers. Now they are never short on water. Whenever a problem arises, all the villagers came up together and find a solution.
Never give up. A very powerful message. And Mohammed, we would love it if you are safe and your family is still together. But we don't know. It's so important for us to be telling these stories. There's a danger in a loss of culture, and scholasticide is happening right now in Palestine. Children haven't had education, although people like Lamia in Hebron, people like Haneen from Gaza, but who's now in the UK, are helping, doing everything we can to help education continue. Haneen, can I invite you to comment on this sense of how education can still go on even in these darkest of times?
Thank you, David. It's heartwarming to see how the little children and even the older children are telling the stories very naturally, and they're very confidently facing the screen, knowing that there is a whole audience behind the cameras that they can't see, but they can feel in their hearts that they are sharing this with them. It's worth mentioning that education is important in every part of the world, but in Gaza it has extra valuable aspect, because by education we can reach the world, and by education we can get opportunities to go and share this creativity and share about our situations and our plight and our stories. In October 2023, the whole education system has been collapsed and start to collapse more and more by targeting schools and universities in one of the most highly populated areas and highly educated areas in the world. I know from my parents and grandparents that education is very important, and even our grandparents were sending their children to receive education wherever they can do that. That happened in October 2023. Educators find this a sort of life-wrenching experience for them, because suddenly they found themselves on a personal level displaced, evacuated from their homes, and also they have seen and heard their schools being targeted on every single day since then. The children who we just saw telling stories and sharing creativity, performing plays, speaking English, trying to communicate, suddenly found themselves on a continuous move from one place to another under the bombing and the shelling. But also now, as we speak, there are loads of initiatives in the camps in Gaza, but we don't want to forget that those children every morning queue up for food and water when they are supposed to be sitting behind desks or sitting in a circle, listening or telling a story. When they are supposed to be receiving education, the simplest right every child has in the world. This serious act of dehumanization and stopping the education and deliberate targeting of creative academics, brilliant professors, teachers, educators, children, learners, destroying schools and universities and places of work, and having the whole population, the highly educated population in the world, just thinking about how to get the basics and dealing with the trauma is very, very appalling and seriously sad. And because education matters, and as somebody who is learning another language, it's my duty to spread this word that education is moving on in Gaza, but very slowly, and facing a whole challenging atmosphere of fear, trauma. Educators are trying to deal with this, but even that is very challenging because the teachers on the ground are traumatized themselves and are being ordered continuously to evacuate from one place to another. So this feeling of inconsistent, deliberate targeting is sad, but when we retell those stories, it's very important that we educate other people about Palestinians from Gaza, because lots of people don't know about the people of Gaza. And I regret to say that the world has failed Palestinians in Gaza in terms of powers and governments. But we as educators, and as Deema said earlier, are this goodness in the world. We're supposed to be inflaming that light of hope. And in order for us and my people in Gaza and in Palestine in general to hope, we need to receive the support. And this support could be by retelling the children's stories, by spreading about the initiatives happening in schools in Gaza, by helping in any way you can to tell a colleague or a friend about the situation. Even in the most appalling times, when a genocide is live streaming on a TV for us to watch from the outside and feeling helpless in terms of physical intervention, we are able to create a tiny change. And there is something I grew up with, that a drop in the ocean is very small, but when you think about the start of the ocean, it's a drop. So the ocean is loads and loads of drops. And one step at a time, we can create that change. And of course, children are gathering in the camps. They're telling stories, they're using picture stories, but also they might be later watching this recording and feeling pleased, like Deema said, that loads of us care about them and loads of us are thinking of them. We are raising awareness about what's happening, but we should continue. No matter how much we sometimes feel frustrated, we sometimes feel depressed, we're in a complete desperate situation because we would like to change their lives into the better, but we can't as much we would, but we can on a small scale. And we will be able to do that on a longer term. So it's very important. Keep telling the children's stories, keep talking about humanizing children in Gaza, because this is a whole act of dehumanizing the people of Gaza and not looking that those children have missed out on more than 1 year of education. Those stories are like gold dust coming out of their mouths, and we need to keep spreading the word. So that's my reflection on the situation, that we are in a place, in a very important place, seems more important than ever, to spread the word, to retell the stories, to keep putting ourselves on the track, on the right side of the educator's history and even the humanity history. Thank you very much. Over to you, David.
Shukran. You said that so beautifully, Haneen. I echo every word you've said. That last story that Mohammed told has been told by Phil McBain, a Scottish storyteller from Aberdeenshire. She told the story in Doric. And Haneen, would you put a link in the chat to Phil's telling? You can listen to it later on if you want to. It's a fantastic retelling, capturing the spirit, the energy of Mohammed's telling. And Phil, I mean, like all of us, when we retell a story, we don't just, I don't say you must tell this story. People choose stories that mean something to us, that touch us in some way. Don't give up was the message of that story, and don't give up is the message that Haneen's just been sharing with us. So what is it that we as storytellers and story lovers, and many of us working in education, whether as storytellers or educators ourselves, what is it that we can do? Haneen's calling on us to act, but what is it we can do? We're going to take a short break, just 5 minutes. And after the break, we're going to have a beautiful example of how a teacher called Evi Karidi in Greece has actually taken a story told by a child in Gaza and created a wonderful lesson that she's brought her children, young learners of English in Athens, into how to retell that story and learn a little bit about the life of children in Gaza. So we'll come to that in 5 minutes. Also in the second half, we're going to be hearing many more examples, apart from Evi's, of how this project is spreading around the world. And Haneen and I will share a little bit about related projects that are going on. So see you in 5 minutes. Time to replenish your coffee cups or whatever you're sipping, wherever you are in the world. Thank you. And please continue to write in the chat. Well, we've just had a comment come in from Joe Radner. I don't know if I've met you, Joe. You're in Maine in the USA. Thank you for joining us here at the Scottish International Storytelling Festival. And Joe, you have written, Haneen, you have said the most powerful message for this project and for Gaza as a whole. Your strength is astonishing, and so is the courage of the people of Gaza. I will tell these stories again and again. Blessings to teachers. Thank you, Joe. And Joe, if you decide to tell one of these stories and record it, then please share your recording with me and it will go across the world. And some of you might be thinking, well, I'm happy to tell these stories, but I don't want to be recorded. And that's fine. You don't have to share your recording. But do tell me if you are telling the stories and the contexts in which you're telling them, because by informing us, it helps us to grow this project. And we'll talk more about how we hope to grow this project shortly. Also, just now in the chat, you will have found the link to Deema's family fundraiser. Deema's had to leave the meeting now, but Deema, we really, really appreciate your sharing of your story earlier. And as I said, people who have managed to get out of Gaza aren't necessarily out of difficulty. So if you're able to help Deema's fundraiser, please go there and find the link. So before the break, I mentioned Evie Caridi. Evie Caridi is a teacher of English and a school owner teaching young learners of English in Athens. And Evie has been part of projects with me and with Haneen. And what she has got for you here is a great example of something that you might do as a storyteller or as a teacher in a classroom with children and can easily be adapted to working with adults as well. It's just a wonderful example. This is an extract from a conference that Haneen and I, where we spoke just a couple of weeks ago. Actually, it's a conference that I set up, the Storytelling in Education Global Online Conference. It was our second annual iteration just a few weeks ago. And this is a short recording from that conference where Evie gives us a very clear example of how to apply Tell a Child in Gaza's Tale. In Athens, who has not only been retelling the stories and sharing them online, but also been retelling the stories and encouraging her young learners in Athens who are learning English to retell stories learned from children in Gaza. Are you with us, Evie?
Yes,
Can
I
we
am.
unmute Evie? Fantastic. And can you either tell the story or give an introduction to the story before you tell it?
Actually, I wanted to ask you how you would like me to do the story. Would you like me just to tell the story or tell the story in the way that I do it with my own students? I don't know. You can choose.
You choose, Evie.
Okay, story.
It's a story.
I will tell you a story, but before I tell you a story, I would like to invite you to stand up. Okay, let's all stand up. And you will hear some music soon. As soon as you hear the music, I would like all of you to start buzzing around like bees, going bzzz. As soon as you hear the music, and when the music stops, I would like you to freeze and freeze in a pose or as a statue so as to depict a garden. Okay, so while you're buzzing, think of how you can mime the garden, and when the music stops, you will freeze as a garden in any way you can think of. Just give me a second to share. Can I share my sound? I believe I can. Yeah, okay.
Evie, I think because of time, please get on and tell the story.
Okay then. Forget the buzzing then. Just sit down.
Oh, no, we can still buzz around a bit.
Okay, buzz around without the music. Let's buzz around. And when I clap, you will freeze as a garden, okay? Like the statue of a garden. Fantastic. Now let's do it one more time, but this time, when I clap, you will freeze like an angry person, a very angry person, okay? 3, 2, 1, go. And for a third time, when I clap, you will freeze like a very kind person, okay? Fantastic. You may sit down. Now, this story, of course, it comes from Gaza, and it involves a bee, a garden, an angry man, and a kind family. I will just give you a very short time, 30 seconds, 1 minute. Do we have that time? I don't know. So let's think. You try to imagine what the story is about. It involves a bee, an angry man, a garden, and a kind family. So maybe you can write a sentence in the chat box. Very nice ideas, thank you. Now, let's go on with the real story. So, there once was a little bee. And she flew from flower to flower to flower. She lived in this beautiful garden and she loved everything in this garden. She loved the colors, she loved the smells, she loved everything. Can you please tell me what colors you think she could see in the garden? All right, in the chat box. Red, yellow, pink, purple. Yes, and what things could she smell in the garden? What could she smell? Flowers, roses. Sugar, yes, yes, yes. She could see all these colors and she could smell all these things. And she flew from flower to flower to flower. But the little bee didn't hear the angry man coming. The angry man came and he caught the little bee and trapped her under a glass so the little bee couldn't come out. Oh, I can't go to my flowers. How do you think the little bee felt? How did she feel? Sad, scared, yes. Can you show me? Can you show me if she felt sad? Can you show me how sad looks like? And scared? She felt scared. Can you show me? how scared looks like. Yes, and desperate? How does that look like? Well, she could not fly away. What do you think she did? What did she say? She was tired, she was sad, she was desperate. What did she say? What do you think? Help me. Yes? The little bee started crying out, help, help, set me free. Can you unmute and cry out with a little bee? Help, help, set me free.
Help, help, set me free.
Let me free.
One more time.
Set me free. Help,
Help,
Set me free.
set me free. But, oh no, nobody heard. Nobody came. Oh, the little bee. Time was passing and the little bee had no water. How did she feel without any water? How? Dehydrated, thirsty. Yes, she was thirsty and she had no food. So how did she feel without any food? Hungry and afraid to die and weak. Yes, yes. So she cried one more time. Let's unmute and cry out with the bee. One more time. 1, 2, 3. Help!
Help.
Help!
Set me free. Help.
Set
Set
me
me
free.
free.
Help! Help!
Help.
Set me
Help.
free.
Set me free.
Oh, what is that? Some friendly neighbors heard the little bee. They said, can you hear that sound? Can you hear someone is shouting, help, help? So they heard the cries. And what do you think they did? They helped. Yes. They came into the garden and they lifted the glass and they set the bee free to buzz around, bzzz, so the little bee could fly away. And at the same time, the friendly neighbors started shouting, free, free, free the bee, free, free, free the bee. Can you unmute and shout out with the friendly neighbors?
Free.
Free, free, free the bee, free, free, free the bee. Yes.
Free the bee.
Fantastic.
Free the bee.
Free the bee, and the little bee could fly again from flower to flower to flower.
Free the bee.
And she could enjoy her beautiful garden again. And this is the story that Mena, a little girl from Gaza, Palestine, not just said, but actually created herself. This is a story created by a young girl called Mena in Gaza. She is our colleague's Luzan's daughter, right? And can I say a couple of things about how I dealt with the story with my own students? Okay, so first I invited my students to give me their ideas about what they thought the story would be about, like I did with you. But then I gave them time. I used their ideas, and we created mini sketches of their ideas in a remote theater way. So I used their ideas. If they told me that the man was angry because the bee would come to sting him, we created a mini skit with the idea of the student, and then I actually told them the story, and then I asked them who they thought the story was created by. And then I showed them Mena's video, and they couldn't believe that Mena, a young girl, yes, a little girl, had written such a story. We created dioramas using shoe boxes. The students created their own sketches. They made the dioramas and they started retelling the story. And some of them asked me if they could create their own version of the story because they were so much inspired by Mena. So it ended up like a wonderful project. The students were very much involved, not only in retelling the same story and acting it out, but also creating their own stories. And they're still asking for the story. And they have asked me if I have showed Mena their own versions of the story, because that's what I told them, that I would, they should make the stories because I was going to show Mena. And
one day Mena will be able to see that story, I'm sure. And Mena's mother, Luzanne, as you said, is in regular communication with me and especially with Haneen. And this is Mena. This is a still of her telling that story. And as I mentioned, some of the stories were told this year. So Mena created and made a shoebox theatre and told that story in April of this year. And it's already being told by many people around the world, like Evie and your young learners. And that's what this project is all about.
So here you can see the young learners retelling the story. Has the picture changed?
Yes, we've seen it.
Okay. We are gathered around the diorama, retelling the story. Here I have the video of Mena, so I have showed them Mena's story, and then we went into the classroom and they started creating their own versions of the story, and they created their own dioramas. Here they are. So they retold, some of them retold Mena's story, some of them created their own version. And
thank you so much, Evie. What a fabulous example of how we as storytellers or teachers can bring these stories from Gaza and apply them in our own contexts as performers, workshop leaders, and teachers. It's how could you adapt Evie's ideas to your classroom or your setting, even as a performance storyteller? I've told Mena's story, Free the Bee, in settings such as Palestine Solidarity Campaign events, in schools, in street festivals. I mean, we can do that story in many contexts. I've also told that story at a march and everybody chanting, free, free, free the bee. And it's how a 9-year-old child, our colleague Luzanne's daughter, somehow is trying to make sense of what's going on in her homeland. So I'm just going to share that image again. We saw, oh, am I doing, let me get that right. Okay, can you see that? Yes. So there's Mena, and on the left is the cardboard box which Mena made with the coloured paper puppets, and on the right you can see an example of a shoebox theatre made by one of Evie's students in Athens. And on a sad, poignant note, just recently I saw from her Mena's mum that Mena was sad because she loves colouring. It's her favourite hobby, and Mena, her mother wasn't able to purchase any coloured pencils because there were none available in the part of Gaza where they're displaced. So Mena was having to draw her pictures using ordinary pencils, but she's still doing the artwork, and I'm sure she'll have coloured pencils again soon. So let me give you some more examples. I'm going to continue sharing because I'm going to give you some more examples of children and teachers around the world. So here you can see, on the left you can see Jana, who we met earlier. telling the very hungry caterpillar. It's a story that many of us are familiar with. And on the right, there's Aisha, a girl in Cuba, retelling it. Oh, let me go back to that a moment, if I can. Excuse me. Okay, and I'm just going to read to you what some of these students actually have said about the experience. Here we go. Aisha said, I'm 17. I've been learning English for almost 9 years, and tell this story was a great pleasure for me because I know Palestinian children are living very hard days with all this war, and doing that for them was like creating a space or a bubble where they can enter to take a break in their minds, feel good, where they can see that people outside care about them and try to help them, even with minimal gestures. I want to tell all the Palestinian children to stay strong and resist. All our prayers and efforts go for you. And I hope that all this suffering ends soon and becomes pure happiness because you deserve it. Here you can see Jana, who we met earlier on the left, and she's telling another story, Juha and the grapes. And on the right is Juana from Argentina. And her teacher, Maria Teresa Continanza, said, why did I ask Juana and another student, Juan, to learn and tell these wonderful stories from children in Gaza? Collaboration and learning from others, she said. Juan and Juana are two teenagers who are learning English in Argentina as a foreign language. One day they told me two important things. One, they want to learn English to communicate with the world. Second, they want to be teachers of English when they grow up. They loved retelling the stories. And what did Juana say? You can see Juana on the left, on the right here. I decided to tell the story because it's a way to let them know that I support Palestinian people and what's happening in their country. Also, I wanted to show them how beautiful their stories are for me and how grateful I am that I have the opportunity to read all the amazing stories they've done. This activity helped me to increase my English skills, like my listening comprehension. Also, doing this activity, I demonstrate my respect and appreciation to all the children in Palestine. So these children know that they're also not just learning English, but taking an active role in making the world a better place. On the left, you can see a student in Gaza who's told a story that she's made up herself about the most faithful cloud. And Juan retold it and said, I think one of the reasons I wanted to tell a story for the kids in Palestine was to give them what I learned from them back. And I believe that telling their story would be a way to engage with their culture and to foster understanding and connection between us. As for the benefits of doing so, well, I suppose it would give both their English abilities and cultural knowledge a boost. Next, we have another teacher in Greece with her students with masks acting out a story that they learned from this girl on the left, Malak, and she told the fable of the two oxen and the lion. And Tina, the teacher, said, Ismini, the girl on the left, and Vasilis, my boy, are 12, while Anastasia in the middle is 13. All of them have been learning English for 5 years. I tried to find ways to help the children in Gaza. And the trigger was your post with all the stories from the children in Gaza, along with my coach's, Evie's, presentation of a story. I was really hesitant at first. I'm not a storyteller. I decided to talk about it with my students and involve them too. As soon as I told them, they were more than willing to help. not to mention the fact that many more wanted to participate. So I decided to give it a try, and here we are. Personally speaking, it was a very touching experience. Not only the fun time we had with my students when rehearsing, but the fact they did it because they wanted to help. And Tina wrote, "Empathy is so important these days, and they made me so proud. Thank you for giving us the chance to participate and get my students to think about other children's suffering. We tend to forget sometimes." And the girl, Ismini, said, "I'm 12. Our teacher suggested the story. We liked it very much. I liked the rehearsal very much. We tried a lot, and it was a little tiring. But this is not a problem. This is not a problem. If we help children, it's very good. For my opinion, I don't like wars. My message for the kids is that when we want to stop the war, we are very sad when we see them on TV, crying and getting killed." Not just children. On the right here, you can see Irenea, and she and her classmate, another adult student, are retelling a story they learned from a child called Banan, called The Bear and the Bee. And Irenea, the woman on the right, said, in Italy, "I studied English for 5 years at school more than 30 years ago. I decided to take part in this project because it's interesting and engaging. Recording the video was difficult at first because I got excited and made mistakes. I learned to be more confident. For Banan and the children of Gaza, I wish the war to end as soon as possible and that they can live forever in peace." So these are adult learners in Italy. Here are some more adult learners who are actually themselves refugees, as are most of the children and families in Gaza, refugees. But these are refugees now in the UK, in Manchester. So on the left, you've got Lian in Hebron telling the story of Hodja and the grapes. And on the right, you can see the hands of one of the students in Sue Piper's class, ESOL class in Manchester. And Sue Piper, the teacher, said, "This class are mainly Pakistani, Bangladeshi, with a few other nationalities in there too. Baluchi, Nigerian, and Portuguese, and Eritrean. Most of the class have been learning English for 2 or 3 years." And what did Sue's students say about learning Lian's story, The Hodja and the Grapes? "We love learning stories in the classroom. They help us learn English. We learn new vocabulary. We love Joha." Joha is the Arabic name for Nasruddin, you might not know. "Joha's a tricky trickster and speaks wisely. His stories make you think about your own life, what I'm grateful for. We love talking about Gaza. It's interesting. Our teacher went there. She's emotional when she talks, and this means she's human. Everything's bad in Gaza, so it's good to hear children telling stories. This heals them. Telling stories in the class makes learning different and fun. We can try to retell them, and this helps us with confidence to speak." You can see they're using crafts to represent the story. This is a Tatriz heart, which is a traditional symbolic piece of art from Palestine. And on the right, they're making a tower of resilience out of pasta. On the left, here is Malak telling the story of a child and a trip to a village. And on the right, you can see a classroom in Ireland, in Cork, where their teacher, Antonio, is working with these teenage students who listen, retell the story, and talk about the meanings they find in the story. Antonio, or Arjona Martin, their English teacher, said, "They watched first the story once, then were asked to watch it a second time and take notes. If they wanted, and had to retell the story in pairs and send me a voice message. They're from Spain and Italy, aged 12 to 16, have a great level of English. The children It made them all think. Just so many different applications around the world. Perhaps the most prolific of all the young storytellers in Gaza is Hala Munter Salem. And Hala has told many stories. These are screenshots of her telling different stories at the World Storytelling Cafe. Even as recently as March of this year, she and her sister Shatha managed to come in and do a 30-minute live storytelling session from Gaza. And what did Hala say? It makes me happy to know that children around the world are learning and retelling the stories that I've shared. I feel very proud of that. I like to tell stories to children so they can learn from them. In the end, my goal in storytelling is people learning and benefiting from it. So those are just a few examples of the application of doing this project. And I'm hoping that's giving you some ideas about what you might do in your own storytelling or teaching context. Haneen, would you like to make any comments?
I would like to say that retelling the children's stories from Gaza and Palestine in general by educators and learners in other parts of the world teach them about the lives and the culture of Palestinian people in a very humanistic and meaningful way. So they're not only retelling the stories, but also they are living the experiences and feeling the stories as they are retelling them. And it's great to see that also refugees in the UK are taking part in this project, because this surely resonates with some of their own experiences and their own contexts before they came to the UK. And they found that this bond is creating a meaningful context to understand more about their own experiences in the light of the experiences and the stories of the children in Gaza. So Tell a Child in Gaza's Tale is a project that has many levels, on the learners' levels, on the educators' levels, on the classroom pedagogy, and it can be implemented in more than one way. Thank you very much.
So can I invite people who are with us live? And indeed, if you're watching later on YouTube, you can also write comments in the YouTube chat and we will look at those comments and respond to them. But if you're here live, if there's anything you would like to write in the chat in terms of commentary or questions, and perhaps there might be somebody in the room right now who has been part of the Tell a Child in Gaza's Tale already, who might like to say something about what it means to you to contribute. So if any of you, like Veena, would like to raise your hand, and if you do the virtual hand on Zoom, in the bottom right of the screen, there's a reactions. You click on reactions or whatever it is in your language, and your virtual hand will go up, and we can easily see. And then we could give you a chance to say just in a few words, because we're coming towards the end of this Tell a Child in Gaza's Tale, what it means to you. And I've already seen that Veena in India, who's told a couple of the stories recently, would like to make a comment. So Veena, what would you like to say?
Thank you very much. It has been amazing to be a part of this project. The moment I saw in David Heathfield's a story in Facebook, it touched my heart. When David and Haneen has taken such a wonderful initiative to take ahead this project. So from then onwards, I thought that I must retell stories and let the children of Gaza shine like stars. May the world listen to the stories. Recently, there was a storytelling, get together where all the storytellers met. So I had told most of the storytellers about the project, and I was telling them that as a hospitality to the children of Gaza, kindly go to David Heathfield's page and you get to know about everything in detail. I've been retelling stories So why don't all of you also try doing that? And after telling the stories, if you talk about Maram, Hala, and Kandi, I think his name was the clever waitress. I said another story. Yeah. So I have sort of developed a bond with the children. And I'm so happy that Deema had come today. I had written in the chat box, I'm really proud of each one of you. And it is wonderful to be a part. And I will keep on retelling and telling everybody, let us spread the stories. Haneen, Assalamu alaikum. It is so nice to know about everything said so beautifully. I am in touch with David, as he's been so kind and encouraging me each and every time, even telling me that, why don't you tell the story of White Elephant? Because it's an Indian folk tale. Such a beautiful meaning, such a beautiful message to the world. So we are all together in this. Anything I can do, I'm always there with you. And thank you so much for making us understand beautifully today. And it was wonderful to all listening to all the children. And I would love to say that we are with you together. Keep shining like stars, and you are doing an excellent job. Being a teacher, I'd like to give, round of applause to all the teachers who have trained the children so beautifully. And you are doing an amazing job. God chooses some people to do work for other people. And we learn from you also. We are inspired by you here. Thank you so much, David, for giving me an opportunity to speak today in such a wonderful platform. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Veena. And Veena, you are one, you have retold several stories, and I have to say you are one of many storytellers in India who have joined this project. Shilpa Story Rack. I can't name all of the teachers, all of the storytellers in India who have been so generous, as you say, to return the hospitality of the children in Gaza by showing them the hospitality of retelling their stories. If there's anybody else who would like to make a comment following on from what Veena said, feel free. And if you haven't yet told a story, feel free to raise your hand and ask a question or make a comment. Oh, yes, Joe?
Yes, thank you so much for this program. I've been excited knowing about it, and I haven't yet done anything about it. And this was the ticket I needed. And what I wanted to comment on was the choice of stories that you told at the very beginning of the program, or that you presented at the beginning of the program. Because one of the things that I feel, having been horrified and terrified and, all the odds about what is happening in Gaza, I felt that as if I was going to tell these stories, I wanted to tell a story that would reflect the spirit of the children who are there. And those first three stories, the white elephant and the tree, and then the neighbor story, those are ones that feel to me as if I could tell them and back it up with what's actually happening, and use it as a part of a communication that would reach people's hearts. So thank you for that choice.
Thank you, Joe. And I'd just like to comment on that, because what I'm finding is as a storyteller who works in schools, sometimes I'm going into environments where teachers and school administrators and head teachers are specifically saying, we don't want anything political. And of course, by telling a story from Gaza, it is a political act, but I assure them that I'm not going to talk about politics, and the storytelling does it for me. And I've often been into schools, even where there has been a kind of attitude in the schools that has been very, let's say, pro-Israeli, and where I've been able to tell those stories, and there has been an acknowledgement from the teachers and the children there that these stories are really special and worth hearing. So as storytellers, we can reach people who otherwise might be blocking off that narrative and dehumanizing Palestinian people. And I think that's an important function that we can carry out. It is a kind of soft activism, a kind of resistance, even though it might not be always as direct as we feel like being, if that makes sense. There are a couple of very brief side projects, but very important projects that Haneen and I are involved in. I'll mention a second project, the poem by Dr. Refat Al-Ariya, the great Gazan poet and storyteller and writer, who was targeted and assassinated on the 6th of December 2023 in his home in his sister's home in Gaza City. He wrote a poem that people all around the world now know, If I Must Die. And I have invited people to retell that poem, to speak that poem to camera in many voices and languages. And so far on the playlist, Dr. Refat Al-Ariya, If I Must Die, in many languages and voices, there are more than 55 languages in which that poem has been spoken. So you can also find that on my Facebook and YouTube, David Heathfield, and there's a link coming in the chat. And Haneen, would you like to mention, more than mention, describe the projects that you're involved in?
Okay, so I have been involved with the World Childhood Museum in Sarajevo, documenting stories of children who lived under conflict and in war zones. We started off particularly in Gaza back in 2021, and I collected 16 stories and objects related to the Palestinians' culture, but in relation to the context and the situation they are in. And those stories have been published on the World Child Museum website with the objects that the children from Gaza have donated to be exhibited at the museum. And actually, the exhibition traveled around the world to be shown to different people all across the world. So I'll put the link for that if you want to read the stories and have a look at the objects. So I have been also doing this documentation of what they call oral history of refugees and lived experiences during my time in the UK when I taught at an ESOL college in Birmingham. So we collected quite impressive and very important narratives from refugees who narrated stories about their journeys to the UK and what they have endured during the journey and how risky it was and why they left their home countries, and all of these topics that as ESOL lecturers we needed to know at that time. And it came across thoroughly and naturally, let's say, through the learners' stories. So those are about to be published soon. The third thing, that when the war started in Gaza in October 2023, the British Council Palestine has responded to the situation by calling out educators and teachers and teacher trainers around the world to put in a proposal for what they called Language for Resilience grants. So they put 7 grants for people who are interested in involving Palestinian children in some ways of language for resilience programs or projects. So I was honored to have one of the grants, and I decided to do Voices Across Worlds project. So out of my long years of experience in Gaza, teaching English, but also directing plays on Zoom, and alongside my colleague who's a professor in the Applied Linguistics Department, Steve Mann, who was supporting this work, we launched Voices Across Worlds, and it's supported by the British Council project. The project is all about creating a network of Palestinian educators in Gaza and the West Bank and their counterparts in other parts of the world. So the countries who have been involved with us are Greece, Cameroon, Malaysia, and children who are in Egypt who have left Gaza to Egypt, and some teachers who managed to leave Gaza as well. Because I believe that learners in Egypt who are originally from Gaza are experiencing some sort of different kind of trauma. and they find themselves in the middle of nowhere. And as Deema said, she felt a kind of desperate situation at some point, but then when she came back to tell stories, that formed a sort of powerful context for her to re-establish herself and restart. So we created this network. 8 teachers took part from those countries, and the idea was exchanging personal narratives among those educational contexts. The project has funded theatre centers of those locations and have given them all the equipment that they can use forever. There is no return of the equipment because we are seeking the transparent and the sustainable impact of projects like that. Because we believe that young people are the future pioneers. We are responsible to creating a better future for them now, but they will be responsible for our future, our children's future in the future. The learners from those countries, from Gaza, from the West Bank, from Cameroon, from Greece, from Egypt, from Malaysia, exchanged personal narratives with each other and play back the performances to each other. So now we have 10 performances of 10 personal narratives, which have been written by learners from across the world, including Gaza and the West Bank, and has produced these videos of the personal narratives. The project is going to have a final festival in February in London, which will be promoted on my Facebook page. I'll put my LinkedIn page in a minute. And then we will have a resource book, which will contain all the stories coming from learners and links to the videos and also reflections from the teachers. So the stories in the book have been edited by the teachers themselves, but then they went into another editing. And we have 3 editors, Paul Dummett, who's with us in the room. Thanks, Paul, for doing the editing for us. And also Amal Mukhairiz from Gaza and Phoebe Graham from the UK. So they have worked together to edit the stories in the preparation of launching the book. I am very honored to say that David will be writing the foreword for the book. So of course, you can access that. It will be non-profit book, free downloadable for all teachers around the world. So that's a kind of idea of what I have been doing for the last 6 months with learners from Gaza, the West Bank, and across the countries I mentioned. I will put now the links so you can check out about the project. David.
Your achievements, your fortitude, Haneen, never cease to amaze me. You've achieved so much in a time when you've also been dealing with a huge amount of personal challenge, and that's still ongoing. So all credit to you for your amazing achievements supporting education in Palestine and across the world. And that book, Voices Across Worlds, that project, I should say, also includes some of the personal stories that are created by children that are also included in Tell a Child in Gaza's Tale. So that's a lovely connection between the 2 projects. And I should say that our project, Tell a Child in Gaza's Tale, we're working now towards publication. We still don't have a clear plan. So if anybody's listening to this now or the recording, please do get in contact with me and share any ideas or any thoughts you have with me. What we would like is for the stories to be freely available to educators and storytellers all around the world. And you know, it's a plan in development. We're open to all notions. They can be published in more than one place. So there are many things developing. Equally, we're also exploring possibilities of taking this into a performance that can be toured, which would be partly live performance with me and partly online on Zoom, a bit like the session today, although today's session has been entirely online. And it would be more performance rather than this event today, which is a showcase, a global lab, as it's so appropriately called. We are in that stage of laboratory of development and experimentation. So just in the last couple of minutes, please do put your hand up, ask any questions, make any comments. I'll just check with Sandy, who's in the room here. Sandy, have there been any questions come in? Any?
That I can see of so far.
Wonderful. If anybody, it's not too late. I think we've shared all of the links that we were hoping to share. I think it would be a very appropriate end to today's session to finish with a poem. And I think Haneen, if you're willing to, will share a poem that has kept us strong over the last year. And oops, I have a candle here. I'm just going to relight it. And if you have a candle or a small light anywhere with you, feel free to get it and to hold it up. But we also have the lights in our hearts. So Haneen, with a candle lit for all the people, all of the children of Palestine, I hand over to you to close today's session, the poem that you're going to tell us. I hope you're going to tell it in Arabic as well as in English.
Thank you, David. So this poem called Think of Others, and it's been written by Mahmoud Darwish, who's a very famous Palestinian writer and poet. So I will start reading the poem in English, and then I will switch to Arabic. Think of others. As you prepare your breakfast, think of others. Don't forget the pigeons' food. As you conduct your wars, think of others. Don't forget those who seek peace. As you pay your water bill, think of others, those who are nursed by clouds. And as you return home to your home, think of others. Don't forget the people of the camps. Don't forget the people of the camps. As you sleep and count the stars, think of others, those who have nowhere to sleep. As you liberate yourself in metaphor, think of others, those who lost the right to speak. As you think of others far away, think of yourself. Say, if only I were a candle in the dark. Say, if only I were a candle in the dark. وأنت تعد فطورك فكر بغيرك. لا تنس قوت الحمام. وأنت تخوض حروبك فكر بغيرك. لا تنس من يطلبون السلام. وأنت تسدد فاتورة الماء فكر بغيرك. من يرضعون الغمام. وأنت تعود إلى البيت بيتك فكر بغيرك. لا تنس شعب الخيام. وأنت تنام وتحصي الكواكب فكر بغيرك. ثمة من لم يجد حيزا للمنام. وأنت تحرر نفسك بالاستعارات فكر بغيرك. من فقدوا حقهم في الكلام. وأنت تفكر بالآخرين البعيدين فكر بنفسك. قل يا ليتني شمعة في الظلام. قل يا ليتني شمعة في الظلام. Say, if I were a candle in the dark. If I were a candle in the dark.
If you would like to, turn on your microphones and just say, if only I were a candle in the dark.
If only I
Only I would have
would
kept my candle
in
in the dark.
in the dark.